Good day and welcome to IndustryBroadcast.com's audio article number 55. Today's audio article is written by Joshua Dahlman. Dahlman, a programmer by nature, got his big break in the industry back in 2006 when he joined on Garage Games as an intern. Shortly thereafter, he was offered a full-time position twice and eventually came on as a producer, where he played a vital role in filling up the Garage Games store with over 50 games, helping many indies get published that otherwise would not have. With over 2 years of Garage Games under his belt, Joshua decided to leave the continent and take a position in a South African gaming company called Luma Arcade. This represented an opportunity to get back to making games, something which excites Josh more than nearly anything else in the world. As well as his work with Luma, Josh also runs an indie studio that can be found at redthumbgames.com, where he has released such blockbuster indie titles as Shelled, Shelled Online, and Dragon Hatchery. He also runs a casual indie blog at, coincidentally, www.casualindie.com. Audio article number 55, titled How to Focus Your Game and Give Players More of What They Want, written by Joshua Dahlman and read aloud by Ryan Wienko on the 8th of January 2009. We're excited about the new platform we're developing at Garage Games called Instant Action. We believe it will be an exciting new medium for indies to publish to. No matter what platform a game resides on or what new technology exists, the same bread and butter principles still guide all good design. Having a cool platform with opportunities and features that platform affords is not a shortcut to good design. And a part of good design is focusing your game to give players a satisfying experience. What this article sets out to do is to describe a technique that will help bring focus to your design and give players more of what they want and less of what they don't. This is one technique and not the last word on the matter, but try it and see if it's useful. So you have a vision for what your game should be, but you can't see it with 100% clarity yet. Sometimes it feels like you're a jazz musician trying out different riffs and going with what seems cool. In the end, as long as the behavior of the game works, that is, it's fun, the process of how you got there doesn't matter. Or does it? In later stages of game design, it takes structure to produce a well-balanced design, unlike abstract painting, where you dabble and feel your way through the entire process. Game design is in good part a methodology. That methodology, taken to its extreme, removes the creative element from design. But used in good measure, design benefits from structural techniques. The following is a simple design focusing technique that I employ. In addition to using it, I've helped several developers with it to help them focus their designs as well. It is another tool for a designer's arsenal. So let's begin. The asset list mentality. Game designers are also often coders, where thoughts tend towards the linear, logical, and textural. Those are effective ways of writing code, but not for designing games. Code lives in the world of absolutes, where X has a specific value and Y performs a specific function. But game design lives in the world of relatives, where relationships between elements are as important as the details of the elements themselves. Take a Bomberman-style game, for example. To a coder, the game may look like a list of features, which are technical requirements to be met. Player movement, player bombing, wall breaking, enemy destruction, player avoiding, enemy avoiding, power-ups, and level exits. This view is wholly suitable for a coder's purpose, but this linear, logical, textual, non-relative listing of each element leaves much to be desired in the way of showing relationships between elements and each of the elements' importance. An apple with one core. The very first question you must answer is, what is your core? What is the game really about? What's the central idea? Where's the beef, as they say? In a Bomberman-style game as above, the core of the game is blowing stuff up, making things go boom, and lots of explosions. That's what you do more than anything else. That's what's fun about the game, and that's what the game is all about. So if you were to make a visual chart representing your game, you would draw what's at the core in the very center and put a big circle around it. Everything else in your design should relate to this core in one way or another. Everything should point back to and support this core. If your core is spread across an array of smaller things, you don't have a core. If your core is actually across two things because you're brilliantly combining two disparate elements, you don't have a core. The Earth has one core, an apple has one core. A core is a core because it's one thing. Your core, what your game is all about, should be one thing. It can even be an abstract idea like creating fear, but it should be one thing. You want a sharply focused, well-supported core. For Bomberman, that core is bombing. Once you have your core drawn in the middle, arrange the remaining game features as they relate to one another and make sense. Again, there is no science here, it will just feel right when you get the placement right. Is that a punchline? Now that you have your visual chart drawn and know what your design is centered on, ask yourself this: is what the core of the game is also what is the most fun about the game? Is what you do the most fun in the game also what you want to do the most? Was there some emergent fun that spontaneously happened that is more fun than the focus you built your design around? Be honest with these answers and have people test your game. You may have to build out a prototype to effectively answer these questions. Game design is part experimentation, and what turns out to be fun isn't always what your design is already focused on. Focus on what's organically fun instead of what you have to force to be fun, and you'll generally build a better game. Core support. Now that you've got your visual chart with a firm core, and with the core being what's most fun about the game, the next question that you have to ask yourself is, are you supporting your core? First, dream up ways to support the core. Note in the Bomberman example that player placement of bombs on the screen has the most consequences of all, such as invoking player movement, getting out of the way of the explosion, potentially busting a wall leading to prizes, or potentially busting an enemy being the best reward of all. The design could have had all of the support on player movement, that being walls could have been broken as you walked into them, enemies died after you got a power-up from a wall piece a la Pac-Man and walked into them. But doing those things wouldn't have supported what's centrally fun about the game, which is bombing stuff. In Pac-Man, what's fun about the game is eating pellets, chomp chomp, so they made some extra cool pellets that gave you a special ability. That's the support. Then they made the special ability be that ghosts were suddenly traveling pellets themselves. That's brilliant support. If I had a second button for a Bomberman-style game, I would use it for a second way to throw a bomb, not a run button, and not a third thing entirely, like a gun. A run button would support player movement, which is not the game's focus of bombing. A gun would be a separate thing entirely, relating only to enemy destruction, giving no focus to design. A second button for a bomb could be shooting it until it hits a wall and stops. That would add depth to the game and continue to sharpen the focus of bombing stuff. The game title is, after all, Bomberman, not Moving and Bombing Man. Think of the other ways to support your core. For Bomberman, this could mean more classes of bombs like EMPs that freeze only robot-class enemies, but whose explosions don't hurt you, or more ways to place a bomb like holding down the button to toss it over a wall instead of just placing it in front of you. In the art direction department, the explosions had better be pretty sweet looking. If an enemy or two looks a little off, it will be forgiven. But with bombing being the focus, it has to be done right. So think of different creative ways to support your core, then think of things to support to be the most fun that you can do, and so on. This is the most fun of game design. So brainstorm creatively. Be flexible with your design, build it out, and make it as detailed or summarized as you can. Play with it and have fun. Trimming the fat. Now that you've built out a branching list of potential features, it's time to cut back, to pare the design down to something elegant, sleek, focused, and more importantly to indie developers, doable. Plus, a design with too many elements is like a dish with too many ingredients. It becomes harder to balance with each additional feature, and often comes out as either overwhelming to the palate, obnoxiously overambitious, or spread too thin. In addition, the point of brainstorming was in knowing that only the best ideas would survive the editing process, and that editing time is now. There are many reasons a feature gets cut. You may have to prototype some features to be able to definitely weigh the strength of them. Other times, what features are axed may depend on the budget. Physics, for example, which adds greatly to development and testing costs, but often doesn't add compelling value to the game compared to faked physics. Don't be too married to any one feature, and be ready to be ruthless. If it's not pulling its weight, or it's not supporting the core enough, or worse yet, it's diverging the core, or is orphaning on your visual chart, consider cutting it. Helping and hurting the player. As you edit the design, cutting and adding features, keep in mind which elements help or hurt the player for balance. For example, if your core is bombing stuff, then effective game helpers help you bomb stuff. Barrels that explode and cause chain reactions, power-ups focusing on increasing your bombing power rather than making you walk faster, walls that randomly crumble on their own, thereby revealing potential treasure or a way out. Balancing helping and hurting elements to make the game neither too easy or trivial nor too difficult and punishing. If there are parts of the game that players struggle with, try adding helper elements before you cut it. That additional support may be just what the feature needs. Weaving game elements. As you look at your diagram, consider how elements call back to one another. Ideally, you want your design elements to be tied to one another and refer back to one another as much as possible, like a spiderweb or tapestry, rather than having an orphan game element or many disparate game elements that don't make sense in the same juxtaposition because they're isolated and not tied together. A few things come to mind that helped me create a definitive visual chart for the game Shelled. First, find the focus. Firing shells is clearly the focus of the game. As it happened, that's also what's most fun about the game, an ideal match of focus with its fun. Now, I had to support the focus. Firing had lots of support. Shooting always resulted in something cool happening, either hitting or killing an enemy or making a big dent in the ground, both positive feedback. You can shoot multiple ways, nukes, sliding shells, etc., and you can shoot gold to collect it. The core is well supported, giving players more of what they want, more of what's most fun. Now I had to support what was supporting the core. Enemies can be AI or humans via internet games. The terrain can be destroyed peckishly or massively, and the multiple weapons have different unique shell art, particle effects, and terrain impacts. Now it was time for me to trim the fat. I did that in the pre-alpha, aka pretty awful version. Examples of cuts include turtle pilots, foot soldiers, which don't support the core, tank upgrades like shields and spikes, which don't support the core, and turn-based play, which made you wait longer between shots, thereby not supporting the core. Now, I had to consider what helps and hurts the player. Water slows the player down, for example, while there's no turbo booster in the environment to balance that out and speed the player up. The only positive outcome of flight, aside from the position change, is picking up a golden shell, so flight has more hurting than helping. Note to self for next version. I also had to consider which elements are woven together. Flight is indeed orphaned from firing, and relates to it only in that both are primary actions that the player can perform. You cannot actually fire while flying, the game prevents it, so they are not woven together very skillfully. Again, note to self for next time, flight always felt like it diverged from the core game, but you needed some defensive options and needed a way to get out of a non-fun deep pit. Can anyone say E.T.? So it was a necessary evil, but it needs a better relation to the core game. Charting to focus your design is a disarmingly simple technique that can yield impressive results. If nothing else, it forces you to abstract and consider your design, looking at it in a way that you are not natively used to. By questioning and poking at your design, you will make a better game, and though we are all very excited about this upcoming platform and the opportunity for indies, some things in the industry never change, and good design is timeless. This concludes audio article number 55, once again written by Joshua Dolman, whose blog you can find at www.casualindie.com, and we definitely also recommend that you head over to redthumbgames.com and take a look at the products that he's been producing. As always, we recommend that you check back to industrybroadcast.com frequently, as we do our very best to update the site on a regular basis.